Of course, this is the grave of Buddy Holly, one of the greats in the early ages of rock music here. He, along with J.P. Richardson and Richie Valens, died on February 3rd, 1959 in a plane crash in Clear Lake, Iowa, known as the day the music died. Of course, you see some drumsticks, glasses. That was his iconic signature look with those black rimmed glasses. And he's buried next to his parents, Lawrence and Ella. We'll come back one day to do a video about him. Rest in peace to the Holly family. Many people here every year come by and pay a visit, almost a pilgrimage, if you will, to the grave of Buddy Holly. But not a lot of people know that there's a couple other famous singers that are buried at this cemetery here in Lubbock, Texas. So we're gonna go visit the grave of Virgil Johnson, a quick but pretty interesting story about his rise to fame and the end of it, and him returning to civilian life. Now, does anybody remember this song? Well, if you don't know, that is the song Tonight, and that was performed by The Velvets featuring Virgil Johnson. Maybe you would call them a one-hit wonder. Depends on how you define one-hit wonders. But a pretty interesting story. So Virgil Johnson was born on December 29th, 1935 in Cameron, Texas. So when he was a kid, his family moved over here to Lubbock. And, you know, back in those days, higher education for black folks, it was not a thing. Like, you weren't gonna be black, born in the 1930s, and your family was like, oh yes, my son or my daughter is gonna go to college and get a degree and get a good job and blah, blah, blah. It just wasn't a thing. But Virgil's family thought differently. So Virgil ended up going to school and getting his bachelor's in education. He wants to be a teacher. So he ends up getting a job teaching English at Blackshear Junior High School. So at this point now, Virgil is a teacher at Blackshear Junior High School, and he's teaching English class. And he fancies himself a singer. He's a pretty good singer. When he was a kid, he sang in the church choir at his family's place of worship. And, you know, he would sing, you know, in talent shows and stuff like that. But singing is just it's a passion, but it's something that he does on his off time because his serious career is in education. And so one day he's in class and he's listening to these two kids, his students, they're singing together. One, Mark Prince and Clarence Rigsby. And so he starts getting this idea. He's like, you know, they sound good. And he had approached them and then they kind of like harmonized together and they sounded good together. So he says, you know, we should form a group. So he would later go on to recruit two other kids. It was Robert Thursby and William Solomon. So now they got this group. Now they would perform on street corners, talent shows, a couple radio stations. So they're mainly performing in the Odessa, Midland, Lubbock, Texas areas. And so back in 1959, there was a singer. He wasn't very well known at the time. His name was Roy Orbison. And so he came to a radio station to perform. And for his backup singers, he had what the group was known then as the Velbears. So they sang or whatever, and then he went on to go back to Nashville. And he would, right afterwards, come out with this song, very, very successful hit song, Only the Lonely. So now he's becoming a very well-known household name. And, you know, Virgil Johnson and the Velbears, you know, they're still at the school doing their thing. And then one day, he gets a phone call, and Virgil's like, hello? He's like, yeah, hey, this is Roy. He's like, oh, hey, what's going on? And he's like, hey, I was wondering if you were interested in coming out to Nashville to, I don't know, maybe do like some kind of an impromptu, kind of like an audition, if you will. So this guy's like, holy crap, this guy, Roy Orbison, is calling me. And, you know, he's pretty shocked. Now, I'm not sure if he had any interaction with Roy at the radio station because, and don't quote me that I know the story verbatim, but they might have like recorded their vocals at a different time and then they layered it with Roy Orbison's. But nevertheless, so he's like, holy crap. So he tells the other kids, he's like, hey, you know, we're gonna go to Nashville and sing for these guys.
He had just put out Only the Lonely. And, you know, he and Joe Melson. He called and he said, Virgil? I said, yeah. He said, this is Roy. Then I knew who he was. I said, hey, Roy, how you doing? And I was teaching an English class at that time. And he said, how would you like to come to Nashville and record? And after I got myself up off the floor and realized this was a reality. These were songs about I love you, girl, you see, and where the woman was respected, and you would sing to her. You know, you would sing to her some things you could not say to her, and she would like that.
So in 1960, Virgil and the group, they go out to Nashville and they meet up with Roy Orbison and Fred Foster. Fred Foster is the producer that produced that single, Only the Lonely. He's also the owner of Monument Records. So they perform for him and he likes what he hears. And so they immediately sign these guys. However, Fred doesn't like the name the Velbears. He's not feeling that name. And he tells them, well, how about the Velvets? But the problem is there's already a group called the Velvets and they're not very famous. No, not at all. But they're still there, so the name is already taken. So he says, okay, how about we do the Velvets featuring Virgil Johnson? And they say, okay, sure thing. So they become the Velvets featuring Virgil Johnson. Now, they would go on to record several different songs. Now, I don't know if I would consider them a one-hit wonder, and I'll tell you why really quickly. So when they came out with that song Tonight, it debuted at number 26 on the Billboard Top Pop 100 charts. And also, they did have another song which was called Laugh that hit number 1 in Japan. So technically, they're not a one-hit wonder. Now, here's where the interesting part of the story, in my opinion, takes place. So Virgil Johnson and the Velvets, they never really hit it big. I mean, they hit it big, but they didn't really hit it big. And, you know, as basically Virgil explains it in his own words, basically they didn't hit it big because, well, first of all, you got these black dudes who are singing white music. Doo-wop is really white music, in my opinion. Black folks' music would be like R&B. Now, if they would have came out 10 years before, it would have been a different story. But they were singing the type of music that was fading away. I mean, guys, it's 1960s. Who's singing doo-wop? I mean, I'm sure they are, but this ain't 1948. This ain't 1953. And at that time now, you know, you had rock and roll sweeping across the nation, and you had a lot of different acts becoming very popular. And these guys, they're singing music that, you know, maybe a teenager would like back in 1951 or so, but not anymore. And the way that Virgil and the others spoke, well, black people didn't really vibe with them. And when they would do radio interviews, black people, they thought that they were white, and white people thought they were white. So there was kind of I guess you could call it a racial confusion. And they couldn't really perform at venues just because they weren't very marketable. You had it. Listen, you guys, you got to understand, you know, Virgil Johnson, before a singer, he's an educator. So he's teaching English. He prides himself on speaking English, proper English, enunciating his words properly. And, you know, black people at the time, they're not vibing with him. They're just not. And he feels that that was ultimately what was the main catalyst in them not hitting it big. And, you know, also they were supposed to at least tour Japan. And I think they were supposed to tour Japan with Roy Orbison. And they never did. I guess the tour got canceled or something like that. So ultimately, the group just never made it big. So in and around 1966, the band split up. There was no other place to go. I mean, that was it. It ran its course. And at that time that the group disbanded, I mean, you have music groups coming up, becoming very, very popular. You have Stevie Wonder, you have James Brown, you have the Four Tops, the Supremes, the Temptations. I mean, black people at that time, they're listening to those kinds of artists. They're not listening to doo-wop. I mean, that's just really, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but that's really what it was. It was just the times had changed, and by the time they got to the scene, it was kind of already like, you know, you're kind of late to the party. I do feel, however, that if they would have came out in, you know, like I said earlier, like before, I said this on the live stream, if they would have came out in, you know, a decade earlier, they probably would have hit it big, but just because their sound to me was just, it didn't fit with the times. Virgil would later come back to Texas and go back to teaching English, and then later on he would get a job, and for the last 25 years of his professional life, he would be the principal at Dunbar High School here in Lubbock, Texas. He also was a disc jockey here in the local region. Very quick, but in my own opinion, a very, very, very interesting story. And this is the final resting place of Virgil Johnson. A very, very simple grave. He was cremated and he was buried here along with his wife, Ida. She does not have her own marker. I don't know why. But nevertheless, a quick piece of history. And sometimes I really do enjoy kind of going back and just kind of, I don't know, retelling these old stories of a time where, you know, like Virgil said, it was a time where music was talking about the woman you love and singing about how much you loved her so very, very much. Rest in peace to Virgil Johnson, lead singer of the Velvets. Okay, guys, I am out of here. I'm hitting the road. I'm slowly, methodically heading towards Las Vegas. But before I leave, there's another grave of a famous singer here at the cemetery that I'm gonna do a quick little video biography on. So we gotta start looking for his grave right now. And I need to get some chapstick, because this arid environment is chapping up these lips. And I need these lips nice and moisturized for talking. Catch up with you on the next video. I hope to see you there. Have a good one, guys. Peace out.